Well, welcome back or to this first episode really of the Global Woke Institute series that we're launching, kicking off here just before the end of 2021. So, welcome everybody. Um, what I've decided to do is to give you a glimpse into my life story since I'm one of the founders uh, of the Woke Institute and have been on this journey for 50 years, over 50 years, to greater wokefulness, to give you an idea that maybe you can relate to, an idea of what went on in my life, which was quite adventurous, um, parallel to what's been going on in this country in its path from what I say both of ours, my personal path and the country's path, from self centeredness, arrogance, white supremacy, denial, unearned privilege, patriarchy, uh, and violence, frankly, that this country was founded upon, to traversing that pathway and hopefully out of those principles and values into equity and equality and what we call uh, wokefulness, which equals oneness, as opposed to otherness. So, this is my personal pilgrim's progress. My name is Rich Pellegrino, and Pellegrino means pilgrim, literally translated from Italian. So, I'm going to share with you some stories of my somewhat adventurous and wild life that took me around this country, halfway around the world, in search of myself, in search of oneness with others, with all peoples and all living things, because that ultimately is what we believe at the Global Woke Institute. That's our purpose here, is to find our essential oneness and operate out of that oneness rather than the otherness or inequity or elitism that we currently are experiencing and have experienced since the founding of America. And not only that, in European history and the history of many countries and civilizations. Uh, anyway, I welcome you and invite you to join me on this journey, which hopefully will be both entertaining and educational. So, uh, and also I want to give you some references. Our website is now up and operational, so you can join us there at www.howwokeami.org. Okay, just spell that out. Howwokeami.org. And we named it that for a reason. It started out to be named How Woke Are You? But that's judgmental. We want you to decide for yourself how woke you are and how woke you want to be. We know we cannot be awake all of the time. We have to sleep, uh, at least maybe a third or less, or a quarter of the day. Uh, we need our sleep and rest. So we can't be 100% woke, but certainly everybody, I believe, especially those that are watching this, want to be more awakened, more enlightened, more knowledgeable, more learned, more sensitive, more loving, and more one. And if you're not, and you prefer sleep, it's pretty comical to me that the people who are anti woke, basically, they're admitting they prefer to be asleep or delusional or drugged, uh, you know, and in denial. But so be it. It's not our job to awaken others. It's a hard enough time to awaken we have hard enough task to awaken ourselves. and those our loved ones, our family, friends, and community around us that are supportive and want to go on this journey. So um, that is one resource. The website, there's plenty of ways you can participate already um, in many facets of being woke. And when we say woke, we're talking about globally. Oneness, not just woke Americans, not just Black Lives Matter, but all Black Lives Matter, African lives, Haitian lives, you know, all lives matter, obviously. Black Lives Matter has always said that as a movement and organization. Um, but really, as Americans, most of us have little knowledge of lives outside of this country. Many of us don't know much about lives outside of your own culture, neighborhood, village, town, state. And so we want to expand that because this truly is a global age where the world is a neighborhood. It's been a path that progressive revelation and progressive growth of humanity has been on since its inception. And in my belief system, we are entering or transitioning from the adolescence of man to the maturity of man or of humankind, not just men, but men and women, and all living things. And so this is a unique time. Of course, the transition from adolescence to adulthood or maturity is turbulent, and that's what we're experiencing. Just like the transition from every stage, from the womb to life and onward. And so humanity goes through these progressive stages. Toynbee, the historian, viewed history that way, and many others, and including one of my main inspirations, which are the Baha'i faith scriptures that outline in over 100 volumes the history of man's progress, of humankind's progress, and the stages that we've gone through and are going through currently. So these resources will all be available. There's plenty on the website already, so join us there. We have a YouTube channel, or I have a YouTube channel presently. Eventually, the Global Woke Institute will have its own. But these videos will be posted to my YouTube channel, which is Richard Pellegrino. And since you now the water is out there, I don't need to spell it. So anyway, let's go to the subject matter at hand, and that is my life. Okay, and this is not in any way to promote me, because I've certainly had my ups and downs. My kids and grandkids will even tell you that, as well as my dearly departed parents and siblings. Uh, but it's through the struggles, it's through the mistakes you make. I had a great mentor and friend, Richard Hoff, who was a super communicator um, and was a motivational speaker and an actor in his life. Uh, but he said, Rich, if if you're not making mistakes, then you're not doing anything. Basically, if you're not making mistakes, you're dead. Uh, so the we're all on a path to excellence, hopefully. I like to distinguish between a path to excellence versus a path to perfection. We will never be perfect, so that's an endless task. We can always be excellent. Also, if you're striving for perfection, many times people who are, they cannot admit mistakes, you know, and so they're in denial about their mistakes. Uh, Whereas if you're on a path to excellence, you must acknowledge your mistakes to learn from them and move on rather than keep repeating the same ones. And so that's what we're striving for here in our wokefulness, or attempts to be woke. Uh, And I'm using that term. I know it's been used in many different ways, um, and some people say it's worn out, but no concept is ever worn out unless you allow it to be. That's up to you. I don't go by what the popular memes or uh, or fads um, say. If I did, I'd be stuck back in the 70s, period. Hopefully, I've grown since then. Although I am not at all ungrateful for being born in the 60s or growing, having my youth in the 60s and 70s, and I'll tell you why. So, yes, that term woke was used back then, and has been revived now, and it'll be continued to be used. And so we'll use it here to signify a very positive thing, um, and that is wakefulness, enlightenment, learning, growth, progress. Okay, so um, thanks for joining us on this journey again. And it is a journey. It will never, I mean, when I say it'll never end for me, you know, uh, because we can always learn more, grow more, and so forth. We use a very small percentage of our capabilities now, and we're not even aware of the extent of our capabilities. So, uh, back to the birth of the pilgrim. Uh, the seedling was born in the 50s. Yep, quite a time ago. Uh, and, uh, born into pretty much a uh, blue collar, uh, I would say an average or ordinary, not uncommon blue collar Italian family, or Italian American family, even though some assimilators in America do not want you to hyphenate. You're either Italian or American. And that was part of the whole plan at the beginning um, to strip us of our cultures, to strip us um, into just being white or black. And that's part of the whole process of the birth of racism in this country. But anyway, I was born into, uh, as the firstborn into a blue collar Italian family. My father was second generation American. My grandparents on both sides, moms and dads, came to this country from Italy. So we're immigrants. I found out later, and I will share, um, undocumented, quote, quote, illegal immigrants, like many uh, of our ancestors here. So it's kind of humorous, if not a travesty and a tragedy, now to look down upon the undocumented immigrants that have come here and are coming here. That's America from the beginning, never changed. Uh, so it's totally disingenuous, especially for Italians, many of whom came here illegally, quote, and even the common derogatory name for Italians, one of them was WAP, excuse me, uh, which I didn't know. Growing up, somebody called me a WAP. I either laugh it off or it was, if they kept it up, then it was grounds for a fight, I guess, because it was bullying, using the you know, derogatory ethnic terms, just like the N word. Excuse me. Although I usually didn't take it to heart at all. But later on in life, way later, just 10 years ago, I learned what it meant when I became active in the pro immigrant movement, which is, again, a joke that there has to be such a thing, since the whole country pretty much except for the Native Americans are immigrants. And the slaves, of course, were uh, not documented or undocumented immigrants. They were chattel, they were property. They had no choice. But that's another story that, of course, we'll delve into. Um, I also want to share with you two of the textbooks of my life and of the Institute here that I'll be referring to many times. The first one is The Sovereign Psyche um, by Ezra Arahon, and subtitle Systems of Chattel Freedom versus Self-Authentic Freedom. This is probably the main textbook of this whole series and this institute. So I implore everybody to read it. I will be posting on my website an abridged version for those who cannot or don't have the time to read a whole book. But in the meantime, even the author, who's a professor of sovereign studies, says if you can't read a whole book, read the foreword and the ending, the afterward. And he made sure that he packed both full of gems that outline the central themes of this book. So um, please contact us if you need a copy, want a copy, can't afford a copy, whatever. We will make sure you get to read this book because it's essential. A Sovereign Psyche. And then the seminal work by another professor, Kendi, uh, Ibram Kendi, How to Be an Anti-Racist. It's really put into light. It's really revolutionized the whole concept of racism, and I think everyone should read it. Every American for sure, since every one of us is a racist, and that's, I know, a hot topic and a controversial one. But if you read this, you'll understand. I already have abridged this, and it is posted on the website howwokeami.org under anti-racism. So you can get that there. If you want a emailed copy, you can email us at the website, and we will send you a copy of the abridged version. But again, it's great if you read the whole thing. And he does essentially what I'm doing now. He goes through his life chapter by chapter to show how and he's an African American gentleman, professor, progressive, and so forth, and he shows how he has been racist, unconsciously. As an American, we all are, against his own people often. Not against white people, but against his own people, because we've all been conditioned to do that. And so he's removed the option of being not a racist. Now, in America, we're either all racist or anti-racist. And you can be both. You can be, as a matter of fact, you are. I am. I'm anti-racist some of the day. Some day I'm racist. I'm working for a company that's racist, in some of its policies. Um, you know, and sometimes I'm unconsciously telling a racist joke or a comment. My kids will remind me of that. my children who are mixed, quote, mixed race, uh, which probably all of us are, but black and white, and of course in this country, mixed means black. Oh, so that's two of the textbooks. But anyway, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my birth in the 50s, and then the next segment we'll get into the 60s, which is a pregnant decade with so much going on. Really, the revolutionary time in America, the second revolution in America was in the 60s. Uh, I'll call it the progressive revolution, where we were thrust into wokefulness, the whole nation and the world to some extent, because a lot of the world follows what America does, for better or for worse. And so the 60s was a mass awakening, mass enlightenment, not without its problems. Um, and so that's what we'll cover in our next segment. But in the 50s, it was still relatively calm, and it was still relatively what the people who say, let's make America great again, what they wanted. Men were in charge, women followed. I mean, I'm generalizing, but in my household, my mother was intelligent, but she didn't really have a voice. She followed, she played her role, and that was as a mother and a housewife. Uh, and I mean, she worked a little bit when she was, before she had me. But after I came and then my three siblings, she stayed at home. She cooked, cleaned, and, did not express her opinion unless it was in conjunction with my father's and support of my father's. Uh, I've never really heard her disagree on anything substantial because that was the role of woman. It was totally patriarchal, still very patriarchal in our country, but in the 50s, back, it was 100% patriarchal. Of course, women had just achieved the right to vote. Think about that in my lifetime. Um, so, uh, so I was born in New York, in Queens, in Long Island Jewish Hospital. I was a uh, forceps baby, which again, everything progresses by learning, by becoming woke. The medical systems, everything. And so they used to pull us out, with forceps, kind of like what break a chicken apart with, or uh, and of course they found out soon afterwards. Well, not soon, but it took decades or hundreds of years. That potentially damaged the brain, because when they pulled me out, my head went to a cone because your skull is malleable, when you're a newborn, and it went to a point. My parents had to massage it over the next, few months into a round or flatter top. And so that's my excuse that I often use now as to why I'm somewhat crazy. Uh, and I've always said, if out there is normal, when I worked in the field of psychology as a therapist and so forth, and I worked in mental institutions, psychiatric hospitals, drug treatment centers, I always said, I told the clients, if out there is normal, then I want to be crazy. So anyway, on that note, I'm going to close out this session. Again, go look at us at howwokeami.org, and I will post this there at the website. Also, of course, on the YouTube channel, and the podcast Anchor will be sending that out on social media as well as on our website and so forth. Our Facebook pages, we have Global Woke Institute Facebook pages and Facebook group as well. Thanks, and you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next episode of the Woke Institute, the Pilgrim's Progress from arrogance and white supremacy to wokefulness. Thanks, and have a great one.